Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, claims that earning money is a science not taught in schools. Schools focus on careers and employment. If you, like me, come from a middle-class background, your parents likely taught you how to become poor. This isn't due to a lack of love or desire for your success. It's simply because they themselves weren't educated on financial principles. They received outdated information and passed it on. Kiyosaki likens poverty to genetics. It transfers through generations. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a finance book I wish I'd read at 14 or 15. I highly recommend reading it, or watching this video, as I'll summarize its 7 key lessons. Lesson 1. The rich don't work for money. At age 9, Robert and his friend Mike weren't invited to a classmate's beach house because they were poor kids. Robert asked his dad how to get rich, only to be told, "You have to learn how to make more money." Even as a child, Robert knew this advice wasn't enough. Robert's father, his poor dad, was a teacher who made a good living but constantly struggled financially. Seeing Robert and Mike's determination, Poor Dad suggested they talk to Mike's father, whom Robert called his rich dad. Both boys were surprised. Rich Dad wasn't yet wealthy and hadn't finished 8th grade, yet he ran successful businesses. They met with Mike's dad. He asked if they were ready to learn to make money. Robert tried to ask a question, but Rich Dad interrupted, stating that indecisiveness prevents financial learning. Opportunities are fleeting. Quick decision-making is crucial. Knowing they had to decide, Robert and Mike agreed to the offer. Rich Dad was pleased, offering them 10 cents an hour for 3 hours every Saturday. Despite a softball game, Robert chose to work and learn, recognizing the opportunity.
Mike began working for Mrs. Martin, an employee who managed a small supermarket. These stores, lacking air conditioning, had open doors, meaning dust constantly swirled in. Their job? Dust and restack canned goods. It was incredibly tedious work. They worked 3 hours each Saturday, earning 30 cents. Not much when a comic book cost 10 cents. They did it to learn about money. After 3 weeks, Robert was ready to quit. He felt like a slave, earning 10 cents an hour, and hadn't seen Mike's dad since the first meeting.
At lunchtime in the 4th week, he told Mike he was done. School was boring enough. He wouldn't waste his Saturdays anymore.
To his surprise, Mike smiled, saying his dad had anticipated this and told him to meet when Robert was ready to quit. This angered Robert, but Mike explained his father's teaching method was different. No lectures, just experience. Robert agreed to meet Rich Dad the following Saturday. Even his own father was upset with Mike's dad, advising Robert to demand a raise to at least 25 cents an hour, or quit. Upon arriving at Mike's house, Robert waited 45 minutes before Rich Dad appeared. Frustrated, Robert accused him of breaking his promise to teach him, of being greedy and disrespectful to employees. Rich Dad asked if teaching meant talking or lecturing, to which Robert nodded. Rich Dad explained that life is the best teacher, and it often pushes us to learn. Some let life push them around, others fight against the wrong things. Job, boss, spouse, but few embrace life's push as a learning opportunity. Rich Dad noted that among his 150-plus employees, no one had asked to learn about money. They only sought jobs and paychecks, missing the work's true purpose. However, when Mike said they wanted to learn, Rich Dad designed a program mirroring real-life experiences. He paid them a mere 10 cents an hour, intentionally making them angry so they would experience life's push and grasp his lesson. When asked what he learned from the low wage, Robert complained about Rich Dad's greed and disrespect. He even threatened to quit if not paid or taught more. Rich Dad explained that most people would do exactly that, quit and seek higher pay, but this rarely solves their problems. He wanted Robert to understand that expecting more money to solve problems wasn't the solution. The solution is to make money work for you. Robert began to grasp the lesson. Rich Dad asked if he still had a passion to learn. When Robert said yes, Rich Dad declared he'd stop paying them altogether. Robert was confused. He came for a raise, now he'd work for free? Rich Dad said if he wanted more money, he needed to use his head and figure it out. Robert and Mike worked for free for 3 weeks. One day, Rich Dad took them for ice cream and asked if they'd learned anything. They said no. Rich Dad urged them to think about the obvious lesson. He told them to observe Mrs. Martin and people in the park. Did their lives seem exciting? They worked hard for little money their entire lives, clinging to job security, hoping for a 3-week vacation, and a pension after 45 years. Rich Dad offered them a 25-cent raise if this life excited them. Their hearts raced, and while it meant so much, they still said no. Seeing their resistance, Rich Dad increased his offer to $1, then $2 an hour. Each time Robert's heart pounded, his mind screamed to accept the offer. He imagined being the richest kid in the world, buying a new bicycle, a baseball glove, and flashing cash to his friends. He wanted to say yes, but somehow, his mouth stayed shut.
Rich Dad watched them, testing their emotions. He knew everyone has a needy, purchasable part of their soul, but also a resilient, unbuyable part. It was about which was stronger. He made a final offer, $5 an hour. Suddenly, their expression shifted. The empty stares gave way to calmness. Their temptation vanished instantly. The weak, needy part of their soul was silenced, overcome by the unpriceable part. Rich Dad affirmed it was good they didn't have a price. Most people do because their lives are controlled by fear and greed. Fear of being without money drives them to work hard for a paycheck. But once they have money, greed makes them desire more things, leading to more spending and more work. This Rich Dad called the rat race. Mike asked if there was another way. Rich Dad said yes, but few knew it. Mike pressed for details. Rich Dad stated the first step is to tell the truth. When asked what truth, he replied, how you feel, and to confess it to themselves, not others. Rich Dad doubted his employees could confess their truth. Instead, they feel the fear of not having money and react emotionally, not logically. They avoid confronting their fear, letting emotions control their decisions. They work for money hoping to relieve fear, but it never does. Money dictates their emotions and souls, a truth they refuse to acknowledge. Rich Dad urged them to avoid this trap. Being rich doesn't solve it. He then introduced the other key emotion, desire. People naturally desire better, prettier, more exciting things. They often work for money, believing it will bring happiness, but that happiness is short-lived. Many wealthy individuals are actually driven by fear, thinking money brings security, only to fear losing it all, becoming more anxious than when they were poor. Emotions often cloud our judgment. Fear can lead to decisions that don't solve the core problem. For instance, fearing insufficient money might make someone think a job is the only solution. But a job is often a temporary fix for a long-term issue. It's vital to think for ourselves and not let emotions dictate us. Rich Dad saw hope when the boys agreed to work for free and resisted their emotions when tempted with more money. They were learning to think despite being emotionally charged. He encouraged them to keep working, saying the sooner they forgot about needing a paycheck, the easier their adult lives would be. He advised them to keep using their brains, work for free, and soon their minds would reveal ways to make money far beyond what he could pay. They would see opportunities others missed. Once they saw one, they'd see them for life. The boys followed Rich Dad's advice and soon found an opportunity, creating a comic book library. Kids would pay an admission fee to read as many comics as they wanted. They hired Mike's younger sister as head librarian, charging 10 cents per child for admission.
A bargain, since a single comic cost 10 cents and kids could read 5 to 6 in 2 hours. Mike and Robert averaged $9.50 per week over 3 months, paying his sister $1 a week and letting her read for free. They closed the library after 3 months due to a fight, but they had already learned how to make money work for them, even when they weren't physically present. They learned the first lesson. The rich don't work for money. They were ready for more, and Mike's dad was ready to teach. Lesson 2. Why teach financial literacy? When asked where he started getting rich, Robert gives Rich Dad's same answer. To be rich, you need financial literacy. For example, accounting, though boring and confusing, is crucial for financial success. Rich Dad simplified it with pictures and plain language for the boys. One of the first things he taught was the difference between an asset and a liability. He said to get rich, simply buy assets. This simple concept is often misunderstood. When Rich Dad first explained it, Robert and Mike thought he was joking. How could adults not understand this? Shouldn't everyone be rich? The problem is, most people are taught differently by bankers, financial planners, etc. So they must unlearn what they, quote, know, leading them to buy liabilities thinking they're assets. Robert defines them simply. An asset puts money in your pocket, a liability takes money out of your pocket. The top part is an income statement, profit and loss, showing income and expenses, money in, out. The lower part is a balance sheet, balancing assets against liabilities. Assets add to your income, they put money in your pocket. For instance, a rental house is an asset because it provides monthly income. A liability takes money out of your pocket. To get rich, avoid liabilities and buy more assets. These simplified diagrams quickly show how people manage money. Robert notes that people in debt often believe more money is the solution. However, more money doesn't always solve problems. It can compound them. This is why lottery winners or inheritors quickly lose their windfalls. An increase in cash often just leads to an increase in spending. What's missing for many is financial education. This is why successful professionals can still struggle with money. They learned to make money, but not to manage it. People can be highly intelligent, yet financially illiterate. They learn to work hard for money, but not how to make their money work hard for them. Many still believe their home is an asset, but Robert teaches a home is a liability because it takes money out of your pocket via taxes and other expenses. This doesn't mean you can't buy a house. You can, but first acquire assets that generate the cash flow to pay for it. Robert says to get rich, buy more income-producing assets, keep liabilities and expenses low. When do you know you have enough wealth? Robert defines wealth as a person's ability to survive financially for a certain number of days if they stopped working today. Alternatively, wealth is the measure of cash flow from your asset column compared to your expense column. When your assets generate enough income to cover your expenses, you are wealthy, even if not yet rich. Lesson 3. Mind your own business. A friend heard Ray Kroc, McDonald's founder, speak at the University of Texas in 1974. Afterward, Ray joined students for beers. He asked them what business he was in. They laughed, then answered, selling hamburgers, of course. But Ray said he wasn't in the hamburger business. He was in the real estate business. He knew the land and location of each franchise were key to its success. Today, McDonald's is the world's largest single owner of real estate, holding valuable intersections and street corners globally. There's a significant difference between your profession and your business. Robert often asks people, "What's your business?" They reply, "Oh, I'm a banker." He then asks if they own the bank, and they usually say no, they just work there. In that instance, they've confused their profession with their business. Their profession may be a banker, but they still need their own business. So many people work for everyone else: their employer, the government, taxes, and the bank, mortgage. Ray Kroc and Rich Dad understood secret number 3 of the rich. Mind your own business. Don't spend your entire life working for someone else. Too many people spend their lives managing someone else's business and making them rich. Minding your business doesn't necessarily mean starting a company, though some will. Instead, your business revolves around your asset column, not your income column. Keep your day job, but start buying real assets, not liabilities that instantly lose value. Keep expenses low, reduce liabilities, and diligently build a strong base of assets. Parents need to teach this to young people before they leave home, so they understand true assets and avoid a debt-filled lifestyle. Robert lists real asset categories: businesses that don't require his presence. He owns them, others manage them. If he works there, it's a job. Stocks, bonds, income-generating real estate, royalties from intellectual property, music, patents, anything else of value that produces income or appreciates and has a ready market. Acquire assets you genuinely love. Robert loves real estate, so he focuses his time on it. If you don't like real estate, don't invest there. Even while working for Xerox, Robert minded his own business, keeping his day job and slowly building his asset column. His understanding of accounting and cash management improved his investment analysis and eventual company building. He advises against starting a company unless you truly desire it. Otherwise, keep your day job and focus on building a strong asset column. As cash flow grows, you can enjoy luxuries, but only if that cash flow supports them. Build the asset column and let the income from those assets pay for your luxuries. When assets generate enough income to cover luxuries, that's when you can buy them. Lesson 4. The history of taxes and the power of corporations. Many see Robin Hood as a hero, but Rich Dad called him a crook. While popular sentiment suggests the rich should pay more taxes and give to the poor, in reality, it's the middle class, especially the educated upper-income middle class, that is heavily taxed. To understand this, Robert gives a brief history of taxes. Initially, taxes were temporary levies for things like wars. In 1874, England made income tax permanent, and in 1913, America followed. These taxes gained acceptance because they were first levied only against the rich. However, income tax designed to punish the rich ended up punishing those who voted for it, the poor and middle class. Rich Dad explained his opposition to Poor Dad. Poor Dad, a government employee, was rewarded for spending money and hiring people, expanding his organization. For Rich Dad, the fewer people he hired and the less he spent, the more his investors respected him. Poor Dad genuinely believed the government should help people. For Robert, balancing one of the biggest capitalists with a prominent government leader was challenging. But as Robert studied tax history, he gained an interesting perspective. As government's need for money grew, taxes soon trickled down to the middle class and beyond. However, the rich saw an opportunity. They don't play by the same rules. Corporations, popular since sailing ship days, offered a way around taxes. Understanding the legal corporate structure gave the rich a significant advantage, allowing them to outsmart intellectuals. A corporation is simply a legal document creating an entity, not a factory or group of people. But it offers a lower income tax rate than individuals. This is why most wealthy people pay little or no income tax. Attempts to punish the rich rarely work because they find ways to minimize their tax burden. Lesson 5. The rich invent money. Our mind is our most important asset. If trained correctly, millions can be made from a simple idea or an agreement. Increasing your financial intelligence helps you see opportunities others miss. In essence, you'll start inventing money. For example, in the early 1990s, when Arizona's economy was terrible and most were fearful of an economic crash, Robert and his wife Kim made a lot of money. Robert cites buying a $75,000 house for $20,000. They needed a $2,000 down payment, which they didn't have.
They borrowed $2,000 from a friend for a $200 fee. While the purchase was being processed, Robert advertised the same $75,000 house for only $60,000, requiring no down payment. As soon as the house was legally his, he sold it in minutes. $40,000 was created almost out of nothing. Total working time, 5 hours. This simplified example shows how ideas can generate hundreds of thousands of dollars if you improve your financial intelligence and see what others miss. Robert states that markets fluctuate and investments come and go. The world constantly presents opportunities of a lifetime, you just need to see them. The more you develop your financial intelligence, which takes time, the more opportunities will appear. Many changes are ahead, and a high financial IQ allows you to view this future with excitement, not dread. You'll see the opportunities and enjoy the